Hello,
Marco.
Nico. How are you?
Good, good. I actually, till yesterday, I had a different program from India going on. So they just went back
Oh,
to India. It was a same program under MOFA, but we hosted a student, normally undergraduate students.
wow.
24 students from India. They are very energetic. Too
I
energetic.
can imagine that. Oh, so you're not resting.
Yeah, it was so. They were really nice and very excited to be here, but how to say, too energetic
Ooh, yeah, I can
compared to
imagine.
the CARICOM group, Marco.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, well, I
Oh,
was in the second session with them, and
mm,
on the third session, I didn't have the chance to be with them. But
mm,
our facilitator told us that they made very good reflections in the end,
good.
and they were really positive.
Yeah,
Because,
good,
well,
good.
in my session, it was the second one, and they just came back, and then they just, yeah, they said some stuff, but I was like, okay, well, you are open here. This is a safe space to
Mm,
say it. But the main objective here of the session is to try to move forward, look at the
yes,
future, and process it, not to
mm,
stay with just, for instance, they didn't say it at all, but I was like, okay, we just don't have to fall into saying that it was a bad experience or something like that, because the experience in exchange experience is just like that.
mm,
Sometimes we can control, some others we cannot, but in the end it's how we process it. So they were like,
mm,
okay. But
mm,
I mean, just few stuff that we understood, they were like culture shocks that are totally normal, and they
mm.
understood it as well. So
Okay.
in the end, something that maybe, I mean, we can, like, of course, discuss it on a feedback session, but
Mm,
they said that it was like a short time, and they, of
mm,
course, were eager to do many stuff, but in the end,
mm,
they were like tired because of the jet lag. So I was like, yeah, okay, this is normal as well. I mean, when
mm,
I
mm.
went to Korea, in my experience, it took me 3 or 4 days to process that I was in the
Yes,
other
yes,
part
yes.
of the world.
Yeah.
And then it was like, just, start like having a routine, I had to come back. So this is like, yeah, it is just like this. But I mean,
Yeah.
they didn't complain like, oh, huge complaint or something like that. Not at all. I mean,
Oh,
was,
oh.
yeah. So yeah, I think it was positive in the end.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
Mhm. So let's keep going.
Yes, yes, yes. I've been in the group, the WhatsApp group. I mean, for the CARICOM group, because during their stay here in Japan, we need to contact them. And
Yeah.
then I think one of the participants, she's from the CARICOM secretariat. She has been sending message to attend the session. It seems.
Oh, okay.
So she was.
Is Esther or
Oh no,
Jusankin?
not this. The participant from Suriname. I think
Ah,
she is also one of the participants who has been eager to ask them to be there, and also the Tusan. I
Jusankin?
don't Tusankia. Yes, yes. I think she's also sending a message to everyone.
Mm-hmm. I
Tusan.
think that the most positive ones were Jusankin, Usa,
Yes, yes.
uh,
Kusa. Yes, yes. Kusa. Yes.
also, yeah, 2 or 3 of them. I mean,
Yes,
Husa
yes.
was really,
Yes.
she was really positive all the
Yes,
time,
yes, yes.
processing, like,
I
really,
think.
she was really nice. Um, and then the other ones, they really, I mean, I, that's why I think that this dialogue sessions were really useful for them, because we had the right facilitator for them, because at once they said, oh, we went to Okinawa and we didn't find the signals in English. And I was like, yeah, because this is Japan, right? So it's like, and I was like, and then our facilitator said, yeah, but it happens the same when, I mean, you cannot like expect that everything will be in English because you're an English spoken country. What will happen when you come to a Spanish spoken country? It won't happen the same. So it's like, you don't have to expect that. That shouldn't be a problem. Should be like a challenge, and you should, you know, go ahead and cover it. So, but yeah, I mean, several good examples to process. So I think that in the end was positive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they just need some time maybe to recover
Yeah,
from the
yes.
from the experience. It was kind of, you know, in a rush, but yeah. So I was about to ask you if you have the name of the Professor Saito session, so I can include it in our invitation for the because I always mention what will be next, so I can tell them that we will.
The Professor Saito.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can make an announcement in the end of our session.
Okay,
Yeah, the topic. Sorry. Yes.
Topic.
Yeah.
Okay,
If
me
you have the
see
name,
the site.
I can name it in the end, so I can invite them over.
Okay. Yes, Saito
So I
sensei.
will include it.
I think okay. It will be about the okay, let me see. Saito sensei. I think it's about the okay, let me see. Saito sensei, I was got. I think for this okay, yes. It is about the development of sightseeing and the local industry improvement in the very minor suburb of Japan. So let me see, we can put the title as the development of local industry in the suburb of Japan.
Okay.
Or maybe and also he said he's going to include the discussion session from his university, asking students to join.
Okay. Okay, cool. That's perfect. Hola, Ceci.
Hello. How are
Hi.
you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Stephanie.
Hola,
Hola,
Stephanie.
¿Cómo están?
Bien, ¿viste que te contesté hoy?
Sí,
Que en esta semana tramito el pago, ¿viste?
Tan linda, muchas gracias.
De nada, de nada. Sorry, Akiko, we were just confirming with Stephanie the next 2 meetings that we have for to finish the year and her payment.
Yes.
So she has the availability, so we're happy that she'll be with us.
Okay. Is it getting cold, Ceci? You are wearing too much.
Yes, it is very. It is windy today and cold. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and today is Carolina, right? Ana Carolina Cassiano. She's the speaker today. Stephanie, today most likely it's going to be from Spanish to English, more than English to Spanish, okay? Because, well, I don't know at the end what, Marco, is Carolina going to do it in Spanish or in English or in Portuguese? No, Portuguese, no.
Was expecting her to join now and to, you know, reach an agreement, because I was confused as well. But her slides are all in English, actually.
Oh, okay. So probably she'll do it in English. But she understands perfectly well Spanish. So she's from Brazil. So I don't know how she's going to do it. But Estás muted, Stephanie, no te oigo. Ah, no, no estoy en el, no estoy en el canal.
Yo ya le
Pues.
puse.
Ah,
Sorry.
ya lo pusiste en el canal.
Para no olvidarme, perdón.
Oh. Oh. Let me see. Oh. Okay.
Espérame. Perdón, Stephanie, no te escuché, repetí. Ahí sí, ya, sí. No. Ok, súper.
Oh.
Sí, es que Marco hizo su maestría en Brasil.
Sí. Yes. Pero mi tesis hice en español porque la investigación estaba basada acá en Paraguay, entonces es un enredo en mi cabeza a veces. Sí, sí, sí. O sea, estudié 2 años y medio acá, pero al irme allá sí me exigían también que haga los años de la maestría y que haga el examen oficial. Ajá, entonces también fue así. Sí. ¿No?
Marco, do you want me to write to Ana Carolina to see if
Please, because I don't
when she's
have
joining
her
or
WhatsApp. I don't see
let me
she's
see. I
joining.
think I have it. I think I
Or
have
maybe
it.
on because I didn't check my word chat. No, she's not here.
No, I do have my WhatsApp, her WhatsApp.
Okay.
Let me. Hola. Okay, she's writing back. Let me see what she already said. Hola, Ceci. She's writing. I'm connecting shortly. I was told English and to connect 8 a.m. Japan time. Okay, English is fine. So Stephanie, she will be in English, okay? So that you know. Yeah. And Akiko, it's 8 right now, right? It's a minute to 8. Yes. Okay, good. She said she's connecting shortly, so she'll be there soon. How many did we have registered for today, Marco? I didn't check. Do you know?
I think we were close to 20.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll
The last
like...
time I checked it in the afternoon.
Okay, good. So let's see how many joined then.
I can send, I think I can still send a reminder. I will check to the ones registered.
Okay. There is Ana Carolina. I am co-host. I think I joined with the LA account. I don't know why. Hola, Ana Carolina. ¿Cómo estás? How are you?
I'm good.
How's
Well, I
Gal?
didn't know. She's great, and I'm sorry
Good.
if I'm late. I thought
No,
I was
no.
supposed to connect at 8.
No, the supposedly the meeting starts sharp, so it should be starting now.
Oh.
So we should be waiting
Okay.
for people to join.
Oh,
We
sorry.
have Stephanie here. She's our interpreter. She will be doing the simultaneous translation if you're doing it in English. So she'll do it in Spanish. Okay, and we have like 20 people registered. We just sent them the last minute reminder. So, you know, we should be fine. As I mentioned, in some sessions, there are more that come, in some there are less that come. Marco has made you co-host already so that you can share your screen. Normally, Marco gives a small welcome and introduction. He does it both in Spanish and Portuguese, I think. If there's someone that speaks Portuguese, then he does it in Spanish and Portuguese, and then the floor is all yours, basically.
Okay. Well, if I knew Spanish was an option, I could have done. I thought we had both languages.
We have actually the correct me, Akiko. Correct me if I remember correctly. The official language is Spanish for this session, but there are people from the Caribbean who join. Yes. And when we have, so they speak English. So that's why we need to have always an interpreter, Spanish, English. And because sometimes the speakers are professors from Japan, they can't do it in Spanish. So if you would have done it in Spanish, then Stephanie would have had to do it, the translation in English. So it is.
Okay.
So however you feel more comfortable.
Good. Now I'll mix both languages. Stephanie, I'll make it hard for you. So no, I'm kidding. I'll do it in English. The slides are in English.
Yeah. Wait, we can't hear you because you're in the channel already. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she goes into the
yeah. So I should just hope people come, start showing up. Okay. So while they
Akiko,
come,
I don't think I've met Akiko before. Just saying a quick hi.
Nice to meet you, Anna. Good to see you. Nice to meet you.
So Akiko is in charge of the government-sponsored programs in AFS Japan. She works directly with all the government sponsored programs, I believe. Correct me, with all the programs with MOFA.
MOFA.
Yeah, and so she's in charge. She's the head of Juntos, this program, right? Yeah. And Stephanie, just that you know, Ana Carolina is part of AFS International. So she is, you know, she's part of the family. She's part of our family as well. But she was just out because her baby had surgery. So we were all praying for her. And thank God it all went well with her baby, and she's back.
Absolutely. It's like 3,000 kilos were lifted off my shoulder.
Yes, because her baby is 1 and she had open heart surgery. So, you know, it's, yeah. But she's a beautiful star. Yes, she's a champion, just like her mom. Okay, so people are starting to come, I see. And shall we start letting them in, Marco, and let the show begin?
Yeah.
Because even if there's just 1 or 2, we have to do it because it's a MOFA requirement, right?
Yeah, and we start smoothly with the introduction.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. So it's okay. So I will just let them admit, and then I will.
Caro, are you fully back? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So we can meet
Full time.
eventually before
We should, before the year ends.
Yes, okay. I'll send you a note on that, okay?
Okay.
Buenas tardes, buenas noches, bienvenidas, bienvenidos. Comenzamos de a poquito con esta quinta sesión que tenemos este año de las Alumni Session, sesiones preparadas exclusivamente para los ex participantes del programa Juntos. Para quienes participan por primera vez en este espacio, mi nombre es Marco González, soy parte del equipo de ley y vamos a comenzar con una pequeña introducción de lo que somos nosotros y de para qué hacemos este espacio. Sejam bem-vindos, bem-vindas. Boa noite para vocês. Meu nome é Marco Gonzalez, sou parte da time da lei. Vamos começar bem devagarinho, falando um pouco do que a gente faz nesse espaço aqui, que é para os ex-participantes do programa Juntos. Entonces, bienvenidos a la quinta sesión de este semestre, en donde esta noche, esta tarde, dependiendo de donde ustedes se encuentren, vamos a hablar de qué pasa después del programa, ¿no? Más allá del programa Juntos, Caminos para ser ciudadanos globales activos. Y hoy tenemos a nuestra invitada especial, que ya vamos a presentarle oportunamente, que es nuestra invitada de la casa, Ana Carolina Cassiano, quien es la jefa de desarrollo educativo de AFC Internacional. Ya vamos a ir a esa parte. Mientras tanto, nos gustaría, como siempre, que nos puedan comentar, sea en el chat o sea poner al lado de sus nombres, desde dónde se conectan, desde qué parte, desde qué latitud, qué longitud de nuestro continente o qué parte del mundo, porque siempre nos encanta saber que estamos aquí de varios países, varias culturas, varios acentos, varias línguas também, que a gente fala português, portunhol, espanhol, inglês, francês também. Então, damos ya despacito las bienvenidas. Gracias, Ceci, desde Guatemala. Boa noite do sul do Brasil, Ana. Obrigado por estar aqui com a gente. Hola, Rosa. Buenas noches desde Paraguay también. Qué gusto saber. Muchas gracias por estar siempre en este espacio. Y bueno, vamos despacito. Hoy vamos a hablar mucho de nuestra organización también, ¿verdad? Pero creo que siempre es importante. Hola, Diego, desde México, mi ex país anfitrión. Muchas gracias por conectarte, qué gusto leerte. Entonces vamos a comenzar despacito hablando un poco de lo que somos nosotros, pero la verdad que esta noche también vamos a tener mucha materia de AFS. Siempre es bueno recordar igual el impacto de lo que es nuestra organización, de lo que hacemos, ya que tenemos más de 100 años de experiencia internacional creando programas para que las personas de todas las edades participen en una experiencia de intercambio cultural, desarrollen habilidades y destrezas en competencias globales indispensables para el mundo de hoy. Y eso lo hacemos a través de herramientas de aprendizaje, de aprendizaje intercultural, digo bien, desarrolladas por expertos en interculturalidad y educadores de todo el mundo. Ahora, nosotros en la Alianza Latinoamericana de Educación Intercultural somos 13 organizaciones AFS que estamos presentes en 15 países que pueden ver aquí en el mapa, desde México hasta Argentina y Uruguay, ¿verdad? Entonces, en realidad estamos presentes en más partes del mundo, pero los países que conformamos la ley somos 15 países de América Latina. Y nuestra misión principal es, bueno, tenemos los objetivos de promover la cooperación para generar proyectos a favor de la formación de ciudadanos globales. De hecho, este es uno de los proyectos principales que tenemos en este momento en la ley. Desarrollar oportunidades de capacitación para las audiencias de AFS y otras entidades aliadas. Y también apoyar entidades transnacionales, públicas y privadas en la ejecución de iniciativas a favor de la educación para ciudadanos globales. Tenemos varias oportunidades en AFS para adultos jóvenes, como por ejemplo el diplomado o varios diplomados para desarrollar competencias culturales, dependiendo del público del que se trate. Por dar un ejemplo, los participantes del programa Juntos en este momento, los ciclos que ya trabajamos en conjunto, realizan un diplomado, programa Global Lab, que nosotros le denominamos, los prepara para el intercambio, por ejemplo. También trabajamos con público docente, con un programa que se llama Global Lab Educator. Y así tenemos varios programas dependiendo y adaptando a las distintas audiencias, como para que siempre vayamos en ese camino de la formación y el desarrollo de las competencias globales. También tenemos la Asamblea de las Juventudes, que es un evento que se realiza en Nueva York en el mes de agosto. Y bueno, entre otras oportunidades, aprendizajes de idiomas, programas de movilidad cortos, también medianos, de mediano tiempo, y así como también voluntariado nacional o internacional. Por eso es muy importante siempre saber, ¿verdad?, que estamos presentes en varias partes de América Latina. Entonces aquí también pueden ver los diferentes sitios web de nuestras oficinas de AFS en los distintos países, para que también se puedan acercar y conocer, además de los programas, todo lo que hacemos. Y ojalá también puedan interesarse en ser voluntarios de la organización, porque esta es una organización de base voluntaria. Entonces, es el motor de la organización lo que nos mueve, es esa fuerza voluntaria que está presente ahí día a día. Y ya, bueno, sin más preámbulos, damos la bienvenida a Ana Carolina, Carol, le decimos nosotros, Ana Carolina Cassiano. Como dije, es la jefa de desarrollo educativo de AFS Internacional, y ella va a sentarse, nos va a contar un poco de ella también, y vamos a escucharla en los siguientes minutos. Así que, Carol, todo tuyo el micrófono.
Gracias, Marco. Obrigada, Marco. I'll be speaking English this evening, but I'll throw in some words in Spanish and Portuguese in between, since we have with us fellow Latinos from different parts of our continent. It's a pleasure to be with you today. As Marco mentioned, I am in charge of education development at AFS's international offices. And there I am in charge of really supporting AFS's educational vision, approach, and developing our curricula for different programs and offerings, such as some that Marco mentioned. And one of the initiatives that I'm really happy to have been involved has been the development of AFS's most new educational approach that we launched earlier this year, which is a framework for developing active global citizen. And that's what I'm going to share a little bit about you today, because it really brings forward a definition of what does it mean to be an active global citizen, something that is relevant for all people, all ages today in the world. So we'll be going through that a little bit, and also have some time for discussion and reflection. And what does this mean to you as well? So we will have some this reflection and dialogue around that as well. So let me just share my screen, and we can get started. Good, can you see it?
Yes.
Perfect. I'll move forward then. Okay, as I mentioned, let's explore what does it mean to be an active global citizen. And first, I would like to start reflecting a little bit why. Why is active global citizenship something important today? Well, we all know we live in a world that is increasingly interconnected, ambiguous, and volatile. And this world has created, in fact, opportunities for people to interact and collaborate globally, either through physical mobility, but also through digital innovation, as what enables us to have this workshop today, to have friends and colleagues from around the world, and to experience different cultures in our daily lives, but also to be immersed, right? To travel to different places, as you did in your programs, and for some, even the possibility of being digital nomads. But that has not only been upsides of the world we live today, right? At the same time, if we look at the news, and this, for example, are just a few screenshots I took from some major media outlets today, and we can see that we are witnessing at the same time this rise of global inequities, of political polarization, of conflicts, and still wars between cultures. From cyberbullying to fake news, what we see is the misuse of this very digital networks that were meant to connect us, right? In many places, xenophobic nationalism and anti-diversity discourses are also on the rise. And they often lead to a disregard for human dignity and for those who are viewed as other. And all of this with the backdrop of alarming environmental threats like climate change that put our collective survival at risk. I believe, and you will see, I picked just a few headlines, right, of our current state of the world today, but I'm sure many of us can identify personally in our daily lives. For example, myself being based in the south of Brazil, Brazil, a country that still has many inequities in access to education and access to global education, but also being in the south of Brazil, which is a highly privileged region compared to the rest of Brazil. We also suffer from many of these challenges and ones we can control, like environmental threats. Recently, the south of Brazil, like in many places in the world, was hit by wildfires in the Amazon and also by floods. So we see this in our daily lives. So what can we do about it? And how do we navigate today's world? How do we address these challenges that are not only local, but global? So we can thrive, and not only individually, right, but collectively as a society. And if we think of how we can ensure a more peaceful, just, equitable, and sustainable world today and in the future, what we need is more people that can deepen their insight into the world and our interdependence. People that really can engage in deep intercultural dialogue and really that are able to take action on behalf of the planet and its people. And this is a type of people we call global citizens. And not only global citizens, but active global citizens that have an ethical sense of responsibility. And this doesn't mean necessarily being social activists, but how do we bring that responsibility to our daily action, right? On how we interact with others, how we make consumers' choices, how we engage in our civic engagement in the places we are in. So it's with all that in mind that we see the world needs more active global citizens, right? If we want to help shape the future and have a future that is all of those things I mentioned, more just, more peaceful, the world needs this type of people. And this is the main impact goal of AFS, as Marco mentioned, right? The goal of AFS is to help create these active global citizens. And we do believe and stand firmly that this should be an educational goal across different sectors, not only in non-formal education, but in formal education sectors, and also for learners at all ages, right? It's a lifelong learning process. So this is a bit what we have in mind when we are talking, why do we need active global citizens? And if we look back, Marco shared a bit of AFS history and AFS context. AFS was actually founded during World War I as a voluntary humanitarian ambulance service. And it evolved after the Second World War into a youth exchange program. So Active Global Citizen is part of AFS history. If we look back, our founders, the ambulance drivers, they were responding to crucial issues of their times. And that's what AFS is trying to do today. So how can we respond to these issues through our programs, education initiatives, and offers? And for us, that's by developing active global citizens. And what we felt over these past few years is that we've been talking a lot about this idea of active global citizens, but we lacked a clear definition. how do we define? And we felt we needed to really update our educational framework to align with this purpose that has become more and more important in our organization. So that's why AFS developed a new educational framework that is really focused on developing active global citizens. We wanted to have this shared language around what we seek to offer across all people reached by AFS, being young students who go on high school exchange, being young adults who go on mobility programs, educators, families that host participants, young professionals who are feeling the need to develop these global competencies. We also wanted to make explicit this commitment that has been there as part of AFS history to develop the capacities needed for our times. And this has changed over time. So now we needed to rethink beyond intercultural understanding, beyond intercultural and global competencies. Are we developing those for what? What are additional capacities that allow intercultural understanding and global competence to enable? And finally, AFS being an educational organization, we wanted really to reaffirm our educational role in alignment with core goals of education for the 21st century. Education today is not only about imparting knowledge, right? But it's also about developing these that I'm referring to, capacities or competencies, are not only the knowledge, the content we learn about subjects, but also the values, the behaviors, the attitudes, and the skills that are needed. So this is why we did it. A quick brief on who was involved. We had the pleasure of working with educational experts from different parts of the world under the conceptual leadership of Veronica Bois-Mancia, who is originally from Argentina, but she's based in the United States for many years, and she's a principal investigator at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. She served the voluntary AFS board and also led the education committee at AFS. Now she's an honorary member. And we also counted with education expert advisors, again, representing different visions, different ways of approaching global citizenship and 21st century education. And of course, practitioners from across AFS's global network, so we could include these different views and perspectives as well. And for us at AFS, as I mentioned, we are thinking of active global citizens. So who are the audiences, the people that we believe need to become active global citizens? In our case, the ones we reach through our programs. So these are learners of all ages that are engaged in AFS. So students, and here we refer to the minors under 18 years old, but also participants in our virtual programs, participants like yourself, young adults who go on exchange, families, the host families that voluntarily host a lot of our students and some of our participants, schools and educators that engage with AFS, either by hosting AFS participants, educators that go in AFS program, or schools that take professional development opportunities through AFS. Of course, AFS volunteers, since we are a volunteer-driven organization, and also our staff, right? We want everyone that is involved in our programs and initiatives to develop as active global citizens. And the way we do it at AFS, how we develop active global citizens behind all our programs, education initiatives, there is a theory of change. So it's our vision on how we can create this type of impact. And this includes 3 components. One of them being the experience, right? We really provide people what are firsthand, genuine interaction with differences, either being through experiencing that in person, immersed in a different cultural environment, or virtually as well. Second, these are not just experiential learning, but it's experiential learning supported by a strong curriculum learning component. So we do support people that are going through these experiences with structured and facilitated learning journeys. So as Marco mentioned, one of our programs, Global WUP, that many of alumni of Juntos have gone through, is facilitated. And that's one of the reasons that's a core component of our approach as well. And finally, we also have a component of practice. We want to give people the exposure to real-world social impact and change-making tools, either that being by content, examples, enabling them to connect with others. One important example is our youth assembly, where we gather youth leaders from across the world that are really tackling the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, either through their social entrepreneurship, to their activism, through their work. And through all of that, what we want is to develop active global citizens that are able to contribute and create a more just, equitable, peaceful, and sustainable world. So that's our big aspiring language, which sometimes might seem still a bit abstract. So before I introduce you exactly the definitions, the components, what are some examples of these capacities, I would like to introduce you to someone. She's not physically here, but I'll tell you her story. And that's Shami Chowdhury. And the reason I bring Shami is because I believe she's a great example of what do we mean by active global citizen. Shami is a young woman from Bangladesh. Now she's in her late 20s, early 30s, whose journey as an active global citizen began with, actually, she articulates with her exchange program. When she was in high school, she went to Michigan in the US, so from Bangladesh to the US. And in her own words, she says, when I was with my host family in the US, I saw that volunteering was taken quite seriously there. I began to do more of these community service activities, and I really found a joy in it. It's such a cool feeling. I loved it so much that whenever I got a chance, I would volunteer. And Shami did volunteer for an extraordinary number of hours during her exchange, which gained her even a public recognition, and she received the presidential award at the time called Community Volunteering. And what she said is that really inspired her and shaped her journey. And when she got back home, she felt she was approaching differently how she saw her community and really thinking what she could do in her country. Also, being an active global citizen for her is very intertwined with other aspects of her personal story. A few years after she returned from her exchange, Shami lost her mother suddenly, and it was to a preventable disease, cholera, that is caused by contamination in water. And she came to see her mom's passing as connected to millions of affected people in Bangladesh, especially vulnerable and marginalized community who don't have access to clean water or good sanitation practices. And bringing all those experiences together, she felt motivated to turn this pain into focus and her frustration into action. And she chose to dedicate the next years of her life to water sanitation activism. And her voice fills with passion when you hear her speaking. For example, quoting her, "The story of one person without access to proper sanitation times the 4.5 billion in the world experiencing similar conditions. It immediately gives you a sense of the magnitude and urgency of the issue." And today, Shami really leads an NGO called Awareness 360 through which she engages other youth change makers to campaign for social awareness and that contribute to the SDGs, inspired by her action in the SDG related to water and sanitation. And she's not alone, she's just one example, right? She is part of this growing movement that we see of people of all ages, but especially young people who are finding a way to combine their passions, their interests with their career, and not only for their individual interest, but really to care for the planet and our fellow human beings. And that's what we call active global citizenship. And what I love about Shami's story is that it helps us see what we are capable of, right? This might make you think of several examples in your life of people who have combined their experiences, their practices into making a difference. And really finding their spheres of influence. Where are the places where they can take action and really have, make a change, make a commitment, and that being not necessarily macro level changes, but maybe by influencing and changing mindsets, behaviors of family members, teachers, leaders in the community. In some, many can be reached by active global citizens. So with that in mind, I want to share with you how do we define active global citizens in AFS, which I believe very much aligned with some of the qualities and capacities that we saw in the description that I shared about Shami and Shami's story. So reading the code, active global citizen are the kinds of person we want to develop through our programs. They are people whose informed, compassionate, and ethical compass drives them to lead lives and make decisions that contribute to a more just, equitable, peaceful, and sustainable world. And here I invite you to notice the emphasis on kinds of person, right? Is what we can become throughout our lifelong journey, as opposed to a series of isolated skills that we master. Notice also some of the qualities. We're talking about informed, compassionate, and ethical compass. So this embodies, as I was mentioning before, the role of education today, not only knowledge, right? But we are talking about cognitive, social, emotional capacities, and also values. And really this metaphor of a compass as something that guides us, right? That really something that will help inform our practical decision-making to making a better world. And here you will see in the image, in this definition, we also propose 4 dimensions that really make up an active global citizen. And I will go through it in a bit. Before, I just wanted to highlight some of these aspects in the definition that I called your attention. When we're talking about the kind of person, what do we mean by it? Is that this is a whole person approach, right? We're talking about the individual as a whole and not just one aspect of our identity. The second, what I mentioned several times about in the scope of the work of AFS as well, is these principles should be applicable to learners all ages, not only young people, but also everyone can become and be an active global citizen. This idea that I already highlighted of a compass that really drives individual and collective decision-making. This emphasis on becoming, right? Being an active global citizen is not an end goal. It's not a certificate you earn or a test you take, but it's a lifelong personal transformation. If we think about it for example, in intercultural and global competencies and active global citizenship as a whole, I like to compare it to exercising muscles, right? You don't do it just once. It's something you got to do regularly. It's something that you got to do throughout your life. So there is no end goal, but something that is part and we should nurture frequently. Other aspect is that it's really rooted in experiential learning and this idea of leaving one's comfort zone. I mean, of course, global citizenship is not only about making a difference in the globe, but how do we connect global and local issues, right? That doesn't mean that we have necessarily to leave our locality or have this experience that you had of traveling, being abroad, but how do we continue to nurture a global awareness, a global mindset, and be aware how the issues in our localities connect to issues in other parts of the world? And finally, this idea of the active that goes in active global citizen, right? That this is an approach really aimed at action, that we view learners as able to contribute purposefully to the relevant issues of our time. And as I was mentioning in the beginning, for example, if we look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, right, that's a good framework for what are the relevant issues of our time that do translate across many cultures and can serve as a backdrop for some of the global challenges that we face that might be relevant for active global citizens to act on and contribute towards. So now before we move forward, I'll dive a little deeper into what I mentioned, these 4 areas that we propose as critical for active global citizenship. One of them being this notion of valuing and belonging to our common and diverse world. The other one of inquiring critically about the world beyond our immediate environments, as I was mentioning. The other about understanding and relating to others across differences, either that being a national country difference, ethnical difference, religious difference, so many types of differences that we engage with in our daily lives. And the 4th dimension being this aspect of taking action towards the collective well-being. And when we're talking about a framework for active global citizenship, it's how do we break this down into what are the capacities involved in these dimensions? And for example, if we look into the first one I mentioned, value and belonging, what does this mean? It's the type of capacities we want to nurture and have people develop. This idea of valuing and appreciating our common humanity. So it's really about developing this fundamental disposition to value and appreciate this common humanity and our shared planet. It's about feeling we belong to something that is larger to ourselves, that is worth caring about. It's about understanding ourselves and the contexts that shape us, right? How this idea of understanding the self and their own identities, where do we come from? How do we have the values we have? What has shaped us in our trajectory? What are the lenses that we are viewing the world? And through this, by understanding ourselves, also being able to recognize the commonalities and differences that we have with others. It's about becoming able to embody this deep appreciation for diversity and an unwavering respect to human dignity. This dimension of active global citizenship is really at the heart of understanding who we are as protagonists of our shared human story on Earth. And if we think back of Shomi's story that I just shared, right? she connects her personal loss to the loss of us and an issue that was relevant in the context where she lives. And that's the capacity of really embracing this aspect of humanity. This is not something individual that I went to, it's something that affects others and that translates across different communities. And in her case, she was able to really situate her own story in a global context, thinking, as I mentioned, of the Sustainable Development Goals and the SDG related to water and sanitation. So that's one of the dimensions. The second dimension, let me talk a little bit more about that. This one related to inquiring critically, it's fundamentally about our understanding of the world, the cultures, and the issues that shape our times. It's not necessarily about accumulating knowledge about certain topics, global issues, global awareness, but about becoming increasingly able to inquire more deeply about these complex issues that surround us. So it's really a mindset, right? It's not only about a set of knowledge in terms of global awareness, but how do we inquire critically about this? And having this sort of skeptical cynicism in a good way, right? In a world of hyperinformation and virtual realities and fake news, how do we combine this dose of skepticism and being critical? And an active global citizen who can really inquire critically values this commitment of seeking truth, right? In a sense of facts, of validating information, of cross-checking, of really understanding what are the facts involved in a situation. And in Shami's case, we might refer to how she really seeked to understand the roots of the problem of unequal access to water and sanitation, and what are the consequences that this can have beyond her personal experience. In the third dimension, let's dive a little bit deeper about that. It's, I would say, the milk and butter at AFS. It's what we've been experts in doing in many years of really helping people understand and relate across differences. And it's really about our social, empathetic, and intercultural communication capacities. It's about our capacity to live with others peacefully, to seek to understand others' experiences, influences, values, and points of view, and also where they come from, what is involved in their lives, and the different aspects that unfolds. Very important here is about the capacity to engage and sustain dialogue across differences, right? It's not about only tolerating differences, but how do we truly connect with people that are different than us? How do we celebrate these differences? And how do we continue to sustain civic dialogue, even when we disagree with people's perspectives, which is one of the most challenging things, right? And how, for example, how this is a precious capacity in polarized times. In Shami's case, we see, if we look deeper into her story, how she communicates through stories, right? When she shares her message, she does share her personal story, the story of her mother, as a way of building this narrative as a strong narrative that is not only personal to her, but that might help people connect and really mobilize them and build these relationships. Fourth, well, there is no active global citizenship without taking action. So let's look a little bit deeper into that. And here we see really this aspect of trusting our capacity to make a difference for others and for our planet, within our multiple spheres of influence. And that by that, I mean the different spaces that we occupy in society. As I mentioned earlier, that might be our family members, our local communities, that might be the work we do, that might be different places we engage in our daily lives. And also recognizing what are the opportunities to engage, what are moments where we should speak up, that we can find these opportunities to engage in this invitation to act, not to see the problems and the challenges around us passing by, but really seeing them as invitations to act. For example, in our consumer choices day to day, how could we embed this thinking as something that directs our decision making into making a purchase, into purchasing a product versus other, rather than just really entailing our capacity and delegating that to others, right? And beyond the individual realm, it's really thinking on how can we collaborate with others? How can we overcome obstacles and sustain a commitment to a larger vision of the issues that matter to us? And again, you see here on the first one, thinking of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as one way of framing the global challenges, thinking how can we contribute to it? How can we help advance it? And finally, just to highlight the last one here, is really committing to these values of peace, justice, equity, and sustainability in any action taken, being the smaller daily action to larger actions that we take in our daily lives. So this is a bit what I wanted to share with you, very content heavy. And what I'm most interested in right now is the discussion portion. I have shared with you the framework that AFS is operating, our definition of active global citizens, and some of the ways that we define what does it mean to be an active global citizen. And Marco, I'm thinking here, since we are a small group, maybe we do the reflection in a large group, right? We don't need breakout rooms. So I'll throw the questions out there and invite you to share from what you heard just now, from what stuck with you, and this notion of active global citizenship. Why might this idea of active global citizenship matter to you? How does it resonate with you individually or with the work you do? And here, really speaking from it from your personal perspective and how this might relate to you as an individual. So I invite anyone who's willing to open your mic and share a few thoughts. And Marco, penso que podem compartilhar em espanhol, en portugués, na língua que preferirem, ¿no?
Sí, claro. Creo que la mayoría aquí hablamos español, entonces tal vez abrir el micrófono, estamos pocos, podemos aprovechar, o si quieren también abrir el chat si no lo permite su ambiente, como para poder hacer algunos comentarios, pero sobre todo también, como dijo Caro, ir respondiendo a las preguntas de reflexión, así que siéntanse libres de hacerlo. No sean tímidos, no sean tímidas. Diego, o Raúl o Luis, por favor, siéntanse libres de aportar sus ideas.
Okay, I will break the ice. Okay, in my case, for me, why is important? Because this is my personal experience of life. I since young, when I was like uh, 15, 15 years old, I think, I start to learning Japanese because I love the language, the anime, the Japanese cartoon song. So right now I have a good opportunities to improve my career. Maybe work in Japan, maybe work in Chile, remote with Japan people. So for me, it's like to share, I don't know, the ethics of Japan to the Chilean people. And in the other side, maybe share of the values of the Chilean people to the people of Japan. It's like a share of different values in order to create a new team. For that, it's important to me become or be more confident in being a global citizen. Yeah, that is.
Gra- Gracias, Luis. Thank you. I really like what you shared, and thank you for being the first. As you were describing, I was thinking the aspects you describe, right? The first one that comes to mind is this notion of understanding and relating to others across differences, right? How you want to bring at the same time the Chilean perspective to Japan, but also for you to understand and internalize those values that perhaps for you, what ignited your interest was culture as the animus, right? And there's always a starting point for each one of us, right? What ignites our curiosity. And then with that, that's always the first step in active global citizenship, right? Being curious about cultural differences. And there's always something that gets us started. But I also saw this aspect of kind of imply there of value and belonging to a common world, right? Because it's moving past those differences and really understanding what connects us, either being Chilean, being Chile, or being in Japan. What are these essences that collect us? And also, you mentioned something for me about taking action too, right? Because that is, even though it's your personal story, your personal aspirations, you talked about a greater sense of being an ambassador of your own culture and bringing that back as well, right? So that aspect is also present there. Thank you so much for sharing. Anyone else care to share how you see yourself as an active global citizen, and why does this matter to you? Why is it important? Diego, please go ahead.
Hello. Well, I think that it's important for all citizens in each country to take account about the an active citizen, because, for example, I think that it's good that you start to change your mind and try to change the mind of your, for example, first your neighbors. For example, this year in June, I traveled to the United States, and then I get some important like tasks to think that I can improve in my country. For example, this simply only separate the trash, like on inorganic to organic, or to be nice with your neighbor. Or for example, if you see sorry, if you see like trash on the sideway, something like that, you only pick it up. No, you don't like, it's not my problem, it's not my trash. So you need to put the first like stone to create a new world, a better world. And that's something that I really take into account because I'm studying chemical engineering. So I think that one of the most important about the industry is that in the past they only looking for, make money and don't care what happened with the environment. And this is why some countries are trying to change. And for example, in Mexico, the new president of the new government is trying to do that because, corruption, only that you pay money and you can do anything you want to the environment. So that's why I something go to some manifestation about that. And for example, in my country, in my state, we have like the most polluted river in, I think, Latin America or in Mexico. So we're trying to like cleaning with this government in my state. They are like they build 4 more water treatment plants to try to treat that, but it's very difficult because some of the plants still like don't treat their wastewater. But that's like I think it's difficult. But for example, where I live, I try to, how would I say, like separate the trash and to say people like, no, don't waste too much water because we don't have enough to all the people in the future. And that's all.
Thank you so much, Diego. I love the examples you shared, right? And especially, I would say, the aspect that you brought, right, from environmental protection, from pollution. For many years in developing countries, we saw that as a challenge for our development as well, right? Or as something that comes secondary. But now, as a need to the world, how can we change that? That's not just a privilege, right? It should be something that we all do in our daily lives. Also, in your example, it reminded me of this aspect, right? It's a fancy word, spheres of action, but like, how can we think of the areas that we can make a difference, right? The example you brought from your experience in the US and what you wanted to apply, but also thinking of your career, right, as studying chemical engineering, what would be some spaces there? Sometimes we can't change an entire industry, right? But we can bring to the table certain concerns and certain reflections. And part of being an active global citizen is precisely that. As you were talking, I remembered of another aspect, right, of how, which relates to what Luis was saying as well, how it's also an opportunity when each of us engages in an intercultural encounter, when we travel to a different country. It's also an opportunity as ambassadors of our culture to help dismantle certain stereotypes about our cultures, right? Which sometimes we also might have about other cultures. But even by just meeting one person, that can help us really see that sometimes things are not as we might imagine, and how when we encounter difference and experience difference, that can really help us suspend judgment, as we say it. Great. I wonder if anyone else want to share in this question, like, why is it important to you? What does it relate to you? If not, I'll move to the next question, Marco. I wonder if you want to share something, Marco, because you're also an expert in this topic.
I will add my opinion at the second topic, I think.
Perfect. Good. And yeah, my second question is around, and let me just share my screen because that makes it a bit easier sometimes, especially since it's in English, just to read it out loud and see it written. So the second question is not why might it matter to you, but how do you see why active global citizenship can matter to the people around you, right? Either if you're thinking of family, friends, city, nation, and that kind of came up especially as Diego was mentioning a bit, right? The examples from Mexico and more recently with the new president. but any other examples that you can think about in your local context, or even examples from people around you, family, friends, of why active global citizenship is perhaps important, not only to people that are discussing these topics, that are exposed to these topics, but how can you connect it with being important for your local context and the people around you?
So should I start, Carol?
Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick comment. Sometimes I think that not many people really see how powerful can be this connection among people, in a sense of maybe when you read one news from another part of the world, you really see that it's far away from you, right? But on the other hand, we don't always have the time or the opportunity to really think how can we be connected with that issue or that problem or that other part of the world, right? So this is why I sometimes I reflect that we are not always really aware of how powerful can be this connection, and this kind of a spaces to me is they are really rich because you can really connect with people and in a certain space, but in a certain topic, and you have the chance to discuss it. And this is how it's a really good way try to always have this kind of spaces in order to see these connections among cultures, among languages, among distance, right? Because this is the first thing that made me you think that this is not something that really affects me because it's really far away from me. But I think that every day we really see that it's more clear that we are really connected and that we should do something, all together. And our contributions, even sometimes seems like little, are huge contributions to, the big cause that is like being active global citizens.
Thank you, Marco. Absolutely right. It's like any small step does sum up to making a difference. I think that's a very important notion, right? When we are talking about these topics, when we're talking about making a difference, about positive social impact, sometimes we are thinking just of examples like, I don't know, Greta Thunberg, Malala, and these people that had huge things. But in what you're mentioning, how through connection with people, we can see the difference we can make even in smaller things, right? And that's what changed the world, changes the world, right? It's the small actions as well. Anyone else care to share on this second reflection point? Diego, I see your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Okay, according to this question, we have like example that happened to me because near of my university, there's like a park that they have like a problem with like a flag on insect, something like that. So the park like didn't have any trees or bushes. So that was like in the past was like a good park to like take a rest of the university. So we on all some of friends of our career, we start like collect plastic bottles, something like that, and we send yeah, to get like money only for like a shovel thing to plant new trees, because the government of those states like gave us the trees, so we put the new trees on the park, and only was like 10-15 people only. So we say like, why don't take advantage to that, so do it ourselves instead of wait for the government to do it. So we put the trees in the park and take care like for 1 year, and right now they're like a little bigger, but it seems totally different to the past. And I think that you could think that is not enough for all the country of, for example, Mexico, but I think that or things like that, the government do different things. For example, in the last administration of the government of my country, they took like the 1% budget of the military money, things like that, to put new trees in all the country where there was like a fire. So I think that if you start doing good things for your neighborhood, of your university, of around your house, that like inspires people to do it, and inclusive you can like reach like an important politic, an important person of the government that can help you with doing that like in a bigger way.
Absolutely. It's this butterfly effect, right? Of course, we want institutions and governments to change and be responsible, but starting, as you mentioned, in our communities, in a university park, is definitely a great start. And how this might matter to others, right? Like you mentioned, just 10-15 people. For me, that's an example of collaboration and how this might matter to people around you in your localities, this sense, right? An example of taking action as a collective, as a group, to issues that matter. And there are not just for personal well-being, but for collective well-being, definitely benefiting more than this 10-15 people involved, right? That's great. Thank you for sharing, Diego. Anyone else? Any thoughts on this reflection question? If not, I'll move to the last reflection question. And I mean, I did share with you our perspective in AFS, or why might this matter to the world? But I would love to hear from you. I mean, for us and in our framework, we do believe that in order to have a more sustainable, peaceful, equitable, and just future is through active global citizenship. How do you see this engagement of people really nurturing these capacities, these abilities, and viewing themselves and developing as active global citizens as something that matters and is important to the world? And yeah, I invite you to share your thoughts. It could be aspirational. And I mean, Diego, you already mentioned some examples in how this might inspire and apply in the context of Mexico. But I wonder if we're thinking of the world at large, any other thoughts or ideas, or why active global citizenship is important to the world?
Okay, I think, for example, I in my case, no, no, it's not my case. But for example, yeah, Chile and Japan, because it's my experience, they have similar problems. For example, environment problem. Environment, no, it's not environment. Natural disaster problem like earthquake or tsunami. I don't know. Chile and Japan is very similar in this with this problem. So maybe, for example, one expert of Japan can help to the one specific disaster natural in Chile because that person have the knowledge, the skill that learn in Japan. In the same way, one expert in Chile can help to one specific natural disaster from Japan. So there are very complex problems that the country have that maybe person in that country cannot resolve, but another person in a different country or place can help to resolve. So my point is there are several complex problems. It may be in that specific place don't have the skill, I don't know, the knowledge or the competence that resolve that problem. So in that case, we need more connect of the people, not connect of the country, not connect of the everyone that can help to solve that problem. For that, I think we need more this kind of connection, kind of help to the one person to other person to one, I don't know, or a company to other company to one country to other. So that is my opinion.
Absolutely. No, I love your ideas, Luis. It's this idea of collaboration, right? Like active global citizens is also about like cross-cultural, cross-country collaboration and how can we leverage that more. And I believe, as Marco mentioned, right, this idea of how connections allow this, right? How this people-to-people exchange, but also this type of virtual connections, right? There is this saying from famous Brazilian educator Paulo Freire that is, education doesn't change the world, education changes people and people change the world, right? So, for example, this type of exchanges and opportunities, you are changing individuals, you are connecting people, building these networks that might really allow people to exchange knowledge, experiences, and provide, for example, address the type of issues that you were mentioning, for example, shared challenges with natural disasters, and so many others, right? I think, well, the pandemic, even though with all its challenges, was a great example of what the world can do collaborating together, right? Like combining experts from different countries to look for a vaccine, to look for solutions, and this really sense of solidarity. So how can we do that beyond emergencies and beyond this type of times and really bring this idea of cooperation to advance other global challenges? I love this. Any other thoughts or ideas on why active global citizenship might matter to the world at large? Yeah, I see what Marco you shared on the chat, right? This idea of sharing how we take action can serve as an inspiration to others and go further. Really create this sense of empathy. Absolutely. Marco, I think that was it from my side. I'll leave the floor open if anyone has other comments or questions. But do you have any other reminders or things you want to share before we wrap up?
Thank you, Carol. Muito obrigado mesmo. Muchas gracias por este espacio tan tan rico de reflexión sobre, bueno, un poco diría la gente en AFS lo que hacemos día a día, pero principalmente compartirlo con personas del programa, personas bueno, algunos tuvieron la oportunidad de pasar tal vez por un marco de orientación con algunos conceptos que lo pudimos discutir un poco hoy, pero quienes no, también hoy tuvieron ese espacio de reflexión en cuán importante es nuestro rol desde donde nos toque y nuestras contribuciones para el mundo y el mundo que queremos, el mundo que pensamos hoy, el mundo que pensamos en el futuro. Así que muchas gracias nuevamente por acompañarnos. Yo sí tengo unos pequeños recordatorios. Obviamente, si tienen alguna otra idea, algún otro comentario para Carol, para nosotros, pueden hacerlo mientras tanto en el chat. Yo, como siempre, quiero pedirles una foto de grupo porque eso siempre es muy importante para nosotros. Y bueno, para tenerlas en el recuerdo, para compartirlas después con ustedes, mismo como las grabaciones, porque estas sesiones también las estamos grabando, así que, bueno, voy a sacar otra vez mi pantalla y les quiero pedir que si permite sus conexiones, puedan ponerlas un momentito para que podamos sacar una foto, como siempre, y después ya continuar al aviso final, que es la invitación para la siguiente sesión que tendremos el martes que viene. Así que si les permite su conexión, sus mejores sonrisas. Entonces, gracias Raúl, ahí estoy viendo un comentario, gracias Diego. Bueno, vamos entonces a una fotito y ya luego leemos el comentario de Raúl. Bueno, 1, 2 y 3. Perfecto, muchas gracias. Entonces ya vamos guardando. Como también es muy importante anunciarles que para las personas que estuvieron frecuentando este espacio en todo este tiempo, también tendremos sorpresas al final del año. Así que les invitamos a que sigan conectados para que luego también comentemos un poquito de qué se trata esa sorpresa. Así que eso también es muy importante para que, bueno, sigan conectados porque todavía tenemos más sesiones para ustedes. Solamente quiero leer el comentario de Raúl antes. Thank you very much for showing us your work and the way to be a better world. I am left. Muchas gracias, Raúl. Bueno, ese agradecimiento va para vos, Carol, y tu gran contribución siempre a este espacio y al trabajo que nosotros hacemos. Así que gracias, Raúl, por ese comentario. Recuerden que siempre queremos saber cómo les parecen nuestros eventos. Sus opiniones de verdad cuentan muchísimo para nosotros, así que no olviden escanear el código QR para completar una pequeña encuesta. Y si no, también nosotros siempre hacemos ese recordatorio vía correo electrónico, que es el medio el cual utilizamos para darles nuestras siguientes invitaciones y bueno, las informaciones que tengan que ver con el programa. Hablando de eso, dentro de una semana, en el mismo horario, tendremos un tema más técnico, ¿no? En este caso va a estar liderado por el profesor Tadashi Saito y el tema principal va a ser desafíos de los suburbios de Japón ante la despoblación. Y tendremos también una pequeña sesión de debate con estudiantes japoneses al respecto de este asunto. Así que, por favor, pasen la voz, no se olviden de asistir, porque, bueno, como saben, siempre estamos tratando diversos temas, algunos tal vez tengan que ver más con la profesión de ustedes, otros tal vez no, pero como vimos hoy, siempre nosotros estamos en busca de esa curiosidad y de que realmente todos los temas que se discutan en estos espacios nos involucren y nos interpelen a nosotros como ciudadanos globales activos. Así que pasen la voz y esperamos verles el siguiente martes. Así que por mi lado, nada más, muchísimas gracias, muy obrigado, thank you, y esperamos verles nuevamente en la siguiente sesión. Gracias, que tengas buenas tardes, buenas noches.
Gracias. Un
Gracias,
gusto
Carol.
estar con ustedes.
Igualmente, gracias, Carol. Thank you, Kiko. Gracias, Stephanie. Siempre una maravillosa interpretación. Gracias, Diego. Gracias, Raúl. Gracias, Luis.